Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2015, parents, friends, faculty of this great college, I am honored to be here today for this great moment in your lives. A few months ago, when I received the invitation from President Healy to speak here today, I didn't know what to say. I was a little concerned for you guys, the audience, that I'd let you down. As I said to President Healy in an email, I don't really have any good stories to tell. And to her credit, she said, "Don't worry, something will come up." Little did she know, a few weeks later, something she never could have known did come up. On February 27th, I was walking across Tremont Street in Boston to pick up breakfast sandwiches, and 90 minutes later, I was in the ICU at Mass General Hospital in the operating room having brain surgery for an epidural hematoma. I'd been hit by a bus while crossing the street, and after initially picking myself up and thinking I was okay, it quickly became clear that I was not. So that day, from my hospital bed, I sent an email to President Healy, and I said, "I got it." So. The lengths I will go for another whereas. So I had 4 days in the ICU at the hospital. Think about what had happened. I was in excruciating pain. I had 22 staples on my scalp, which you can't really see right now. And that's when I realized I do have an important lesson for all of you. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2015, I'm here today to tell you, look both ways before you cross the street. I really wanted to leave right there. In all seriousness, I do have a few stories to tell you today, and this is Babson College, so let's talk about entrepreneurship. Yeah. As you may know, 12 years ago, May 2003, I sat where you are all sitting right now and got the same diploma that you are getting today. And back then, I was sure I could be successful, but I just didn't know how. And that scared the crap out of me. But I did it. And the funny thing is, you might even say that I'm standing here before you as a proud alumnus, even now as a doctor, and most importantly, as commencement speaker at the best entrepreneurship college in the world. And you might say that all of this is precisely because I was not an entrepreneur. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's true I've been fortunate and successful in my career, but in large part, that success came from working for another company instead of starting one myself. Many of you may be in a similar situation. Entrepreneurial at heart, motivated self-starters, certain to work for yourself someday, but also maybe to start a regular job at any one of the great companies in Boston or beyond. So, while thinking about what I wanted to tell you, it became clear that my most valuable message might be an unpopular one, but it is this: you do not need to work for yourself and start your own business to be an entrepreneur. If this sounds crazy, hear me out. I'll start with a story about my own journey to being an entrepreneur inside of someone else's organization. My first business, long before Babson, was a lemonade stand, just like probably all of you. Little cliche. And then from middle and high school, I started a bunch more businesses, and once I arrived on this campus, I even started more. In fact, I was so determined to start my own business at Babson, I went off campus and raised $10,000 from some nonprofits to give me enough money to open my first office on campus. And that helped me convince the president at the time to let me use the basement space in Coleman, that beautiful space, to become Babson's first hatchery, which I'm humbled to learn, I saw it yesterday, is still here today. Thank you. So by the time I was sitting exactly where you are, graduating from the best entrepreneurial college in the world, armed with the ideals of a Babson education, and having already started some 10 businesses, I was ready to prove myself to the world that I could be a successful entrepreneur. So, now it starts getting interesting. In 2004, I got a call from Sean Parker, and he wanted to know if I would join a little company called The Facebook. He asked if I wanted to be one of the first 10 employees, to receive a substantial share of equity, and to work for an unknown genius named Mark Zuckerberg. I made the obvious choice, and I said no. Why would I say yes? I was an entrepreneur. That meant being my own boss. There was no way an entrepreneur could be anything other than his or her own boss, and I was convinced of it. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. My counteroffer to Sean was that instead of hiring me, Kevin Colleran, he would hire my company, Kevin Colleran Incorporated, which would be me selling ads for Facebook in exchange for commission. No salary, no equity. This felt much more entrepreneurial and Babson-worthy than accepting a normal job. So I laid this idea out to Sean, and he made the obvious choice also. He said no. He explained that eventually this small company called The Facebook would grow big enough to where it needed its own team, and as a third-party reseller, like I had proposed, the better I did, the sooner I would be obsolete, which means my new company would grow itself out of business. I was conflicted. On the one hand, I wanted to be my own boss, but on the other hand, I wanted to be part of an organization and a real business that felt real purpose. And it felt like Facebook and Babson was going to be that opportunity. What to do? Well, thinking at the time that I was putting my entrepreneurship dreams on hold, I said yes to the job, and I got to work. My first office was a Dell laptop in my shared New York City apartment. I went to nearby colleges, picked up school newspapers, and called the businesses that had purchased ads. I spent a lot of my time having to explain what social networking was, and even what Facebook even meant. 7 years later, I became the most tenured employee at Facebook, other than Mark Zuckerberg, and it was time for a new challenge. By that time, I was leading the partnerships between Facebook and some of the biggest advertisers in the world, helping to build deals worth nearly $100 million. And I realized something. Without knowing it, even though I was working for somebody else, I had in fact been an entrepreneur the whole time. I had not actually put those dreams on hold like I originally thought by taking that real job, nor had I betrayed or wasted my Babson education. In fact, I controlled my own schedule, I owned my own client relationships, I built my own sales materials, and my level of effort directly impacted my commissions. I was my own boss. More importantly, I learned about total commitment. And this, I think, is an important one. I wasn't trying to start another business during the evenings like I had always done previously, nor was I waiting for a better opportunity to come my way. Instead, along with many other highly motivated people, I was building a company, and my unique role was to generate the advertising revenue needed to survive. Today, that business connects 1.4 billion people and is worth over $200 billion. Nice. So, as you think about the future, prepare to have your definition of entrepreneurship change. Prepare to have your goals change. Prepare for yourself to change. Because if you can't imagine a world different from the one you see today, you will never build a better one tomorrow. I learned that working for another company, and I see that today in my job as a venture capitalist. No matter what path your career takes, even if you are taking a regular job, remember, always be building the skills that you need that are necessary for real entrepreneurship. Which brings me to my final point, which is prepare instead of planning. Don't plan for your big opportunity, but instead make sure you prepare for when it comes. Before I was finally convinced to join Facebook, my entrepreneurial plan was to be a passionate self-starter CEO with several businesses of different types, all overlapping at the same time. That was the plan. Committing 100% to a single company was nearly as blasphemous to me as working for somebody other than myself. Fast forward to today. 1 month ago, with 2 former Facebook colleagues, we announced the launch of our own venture capital firm called Slow Ventures. More than 100 CEOs, company founders, and tech world leaders, and more than a dozen venture capital firms have invested in Slow Ventures, our new fund. Thank you. They've entrusted us with more than $80 million of capital, And if it were not for my time at Facebook, working for somebody else, learning thousands of entrepreneurial lessons, and building a personal network throughout Silicon Valley, I would not have been prepared for this new possibility. So finally, 12 years after graduating Babson, I am starting my own company. So, now I get to work with dozens of young founders, helping guide their companies to success. I'm finally doing what I'd planned to do 12 years ago when I sat in these very chairs that you are in now. I never planned for my entrepreneurial career to play out this way. More importantly, I could not have planned for it to play out this way if I hadn't challenged my own notions of entrepreneurship back in 2005 and taken that job. If I hadn't committed myself 100% to somebody else's company, if I hadn't built my own entrepreneurial career inside that organization, I would not be here today. If I hadn't grown my personal network throughout my career at Facebook, I wouldn't be here today. Which is why I said earlier, the reason I am here today, as an entrepreneur, speaking to all of you, is because precisely Babson taught me what I should do, which I thought was not entrepreneurial. And for that, I took that regular job at Facebook. I hope all of you will experience this very good kind of being wrong. Finally, I'd like to end on a serious note. I opened by joking about the little accident. Well, you can imagine when I woke up from brain surgery and I learned that I had only been an hour or two away from death, I took some time for reflection. I asked myself all of the usual questions. Am I living the life I always wanted? Have I made any decisions I regret? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? What would I change as a result of this accident? And my honest answer is nothing, which is actually much more profound than the accident itself. I woke up from surgery, saw my wife and my family. I took a selfie, immediately put it on Facebook. It's actually in the Boston Globe today, you can see it. Because as I think about it, there is nothing I would change. And if there's any real definition of life itself and happiness, it is that. Now, I wouldn't wish any of you to get hit by a bus. But if you do, no. But I do want you to live your lives in a way that leaves you without regrets. Build your career, develop friendships in a way that when you do have a reason to look back, there is nothing you would change. And the degree you have earned today is absolutely the best place to start. So wherever you're going, whatever unpredictable path you take, I am certain you will all do great things, and I can't wait to cheer you on. Thank you.